was very valuable to hear all the presentations, but it brought me to the idea, and I want to challenge the panel actually. Where did I see new learning or a different kind of learning? Probably you're just selling old wine in new bottles. So can you tell me, where is a different learning, or what is the difference in what you are doing in learning and knowledge creation, for instance? For instance, Benny, you were talking about freedom in your e-portfolio, but you gave the students epistemological agency, but you didn't give them the criteria agency, because the teacher still is in power of what they have to do at the end. And why didn't you give the possibility to students of annotate to other students? Why does the teacher have to do that, for instance? And I think it's quite different if you see Daniels, who is much more a sharing of knowledge. And, well, these are kind of things I was talking. So, can you, for instance, go into, is it really different learning with all these new technology, or is it just good technology used for old-fashioned learning?
I, to a certain extent, agree with you that the use of electronic portfolio, that the extent that I've used, may still be kind of a new way of doing some old things. But in the process itself, I would say that the old ways of doing the old things may not be too effective or effective enough, but at least that from the responses of some of the students, that they find the new ways of doing the old things, they are already, I think, more effective. At least they find it encouraging or kind of inspiring. The direction, I think, to a certain extent, I agree with Daniel and work with Daniel further, is how we can go further. And so also agree with Diane, is that the rethinking on the old and new. I think the issue is not so much old or new, or like our chief executive saying, it's not big or small government, is whether it works or not. So actually the same thing is about the learning. I think it's not so much old or new. It's not the issue. The issue is that whether the student achieve the learning. And I don't think that the teacher should not be a part of the process. The teacher must be a part of the process. This is just at the degree, okay? Maybe I think the more old way of thinking is that the teacher will be playing the major or maybe the only supply of the criteria. And the new way of this, that the students will be the main kind of supply of the criteria. And I see that the point is not so much, again, not old and new, but rather is that teachers and students will be able to come together to work out the set of criteria. And that's in some way may not need to be done in so-called new ways. Actually, in a very traditional classroom setting, that we can come to agree on what do you think about the percentage of each items of assessment. Well, maybe I provide the set of criteria on the assessment of the e-portfolio. You can comment on that and see whether we can come to an agreement. But for some students, they have no experience of e-portfolio, that they have no idea actually what they can, how to kind of design the portfolio or the criteria of assessment. And it may be after they have completed that, then they provide the feedbacks. And I use the experience of the students of the last batch, and then use it to construct a more kind of relevant criteria for the next batch. And in this way, it may not be I'm kind of working with the students directly affected by the assessment criteria, but rather is building up the assessment criteria together with all the students from the past to the present and even to the future. So that is I don't know whether it can satisfy your new way of thinking.
I'd like to comment because I think, can you hear me? Is this working? I think you raise a really good concern, and I think sometimes with technology, as with any kind of teaching, we have to sometimes think of the do no harm model, like medicine, right? We don't want to do any harm. With a bit of luck, we'll do some good. But in the worst case scenario, I think we can actually detract from learning by doing too many things the wrong way. Now, my area is cognitive psychology, so I'm very interested in how people think and how people learn. We know a lot from the last few decades of research on learning to know that there are certain things that help student learn. Staying on task, spending time engaged with the content, having some conversations about stuff, and so on and so forth. You're educators, you probably know these. We know how students learn. When we think of technology, we can think about what is working now in our traditional ways and what might we like to do that we can't do in our traditional ways, and are there some technology things to support it.